So you've watched all the videos in the worry management series, and you've learned a lot of tools that are helping you better control and better manage your worries. And what you're wondering about is, how do you make sure that you maintain these gains? How do you keep the progress going? Well, that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. Hi everyone. In this video, I want to talk about how you maintain the progress and the gains you may have made by watching the worry management videos that I've been presenting in this series. But before I get into that, I just want to go over a couple of disclaimers. I'm a registered psychologist in the province of British Columbia, Canada, and these videos are for informational purposes only. They're not intended as a replacement and substitute for advice from your doctor or mental health professional. Now, with those two things out of the way, let's talk about maintaining progress and preventing relapse. So, what we've done over the last 14 videos is talk about a number of worry management skills and tools. We started out with our basic engine of worry. We talked about the role that intolerance of uncertainty plays as the fuel that drives the worry engine. We've talked about the role of beliefs about the usefulness of worry and how those beliefs can maintain excessive, difficult to control worry. We've talked about the role of negative problem orientation and ineffective problem solving in keeping worry about current problems going. We've talked about how cognitive avoidance can maintain worries about future or potential problems. We've also talked about a flowchart for and recipe for how you go about managing different types of worries, including type 1 worries, type 2 worries, and mixed or complex worries. So we have talked about a lot of tools. We've talked about a lot of skills, and you may have learned a lot by watching all of these videos. So the question becomes, okay, well, what do I do with this now moving forward? Now, one of the things I want to point out is that this model of worry that I'm talking about here isn't just something that I've imagined. It's actually based in a lot of scientific research that has backed this model of worry and backed this treatment protocol that I've been walking you through. This treatment protocol is based on the research and work of a really brilliant psychologist named Michel Dugas, who's at Concordia University in Montreal. And what Dugas and his colleagues did was they developed this protocol and then they administered it to a number of people who worried excessively, people with generalized anxiety disorder. And what they found was that at the end of treatment, not surprisingly, the vast majority of people who went through this treatment showed significant improvements in their worry levels, in terms of their anxiety levels. So it showed that at the end of treatment, the treatment had actually worked. It had actually been really effective in terms of helping people better manage their worry. But what they did was they took the research even a step further and they followed up the people 2 years later. And what they found was actually quite encouraging. They found that the majority of people who went through this treatment protocol at 2 years later were still showing the same gains and the same improvement that they had demonstrated at the end of treatment. And so what that means is that the treatment wasn't just effective as long as the person was in the treatment or was receiving the therapy, but that they maintained the progress 2 years later. And so there are lasting improvements and lasting gains from this treatment. But what they also found was that there was a subset of people who actually showed even further improvements at the 2-year mark, that they demonstrated even lower levels of worry and even lower levels of anxiety 2 years later than they did when they stopped the therapy. So what this demonstrates is that for the most of the people, the vast majority of people who go through this treatment and who go through this treatment protocol actually maintain their gains or show even further improvement 2 years later. And that's great to know. So, what it means is that this treatment isn't just something that you do and then the benefits go away. It's something in which the benefits are maintained for at least 2 years, likely beyond. But in the research, what they also found was that there was a small subset of people who experienced a recurrence of symptoms. So at 2 years later, they are actually demonstrating higher levels of worry and higher levels of anxiety than they were when they stopped treatment. And so what Dugas and his colleagues looked at was, what was the difference between these groups of people? What was it about the people who showed a recurrence of symptoms, who showed a deterioration in their level of worry and anxiety at 2 years compared to the people who maintained their gains or who even got better at 2 years? And not surprisingly, what they found was that the people who maintained their gains or who continued to get better at 2 years, those were the people who were still using the worry management skills. Whereas the people who showed a worsening in their symptoms at 2 years, they were people who, at the end of treatment, had felt better, and then they were just happy to be done with excessive worry. They were happy to be over it, and they just wanted to move on with their lives. And so they stopped using the skills. And this is one of the things about this type of treatment or this approach for worry management. It's a skills-based form of treatment. It is not a worry cure, it's worry management. Because the reality is, everyone worries, and everyone will always worry. But this treatment isn't about preventing worry. It's about helping a person control and manage the worry so it's not so excessive or interfering in a person's life. And so if you stop using the tools, then they're going to stop being of benefit. And you're likely going to fall back into old habits of excessive worry and high anxiety. And so it really is about, what can you do to make sure that you're continuing to use your tools? What can you do to ensure that you're maintaining the gains and using these worry management skills on an ongoing basis? And I want to give a few tips about how to do that in this video. So the first thing to realize, and the first thing that's really important to understand, is that there will be times when you will experience a resurgence in worry. There will be times in your life moving forward where you will experience higher levels of worry because life stressors will come up. Things will come up, and we know that life stress tends to exacerbate and increase worry for people. Now, there's a difference between a temporary increase in worry and a full relapse of worry. So what you want to do is to take these life stressors and to take these the increase in worry that comes with these life stressors and really apply the worry management tools to address the worries as they come up and help you get through those life stressors and get through the worries associated with those life stressors. Now, sometimes life stressors are unexpected. They come out of the blue. I suddenly lose my job. Someone in my family suddenly gets sick. And I didn't anticipate it. There was no way I could have anticipated it. There's not really much you can do about those types of stressors. However, there are some life stressors that are predictable. And so what you want to do, one of the first things you can do to ensure that you're maintaining your use of these worry management skills, is to plan ahead for future stressors. So for example, some predictable life stressors are the holiday season, Christmas and New Year's. A lot of people find that time of year to be extremely stressful. Well, that's an example of a predictable stressor. So if you know that the holiday season's coming up, the idea is to plan ahead for what it is that you're going to do to better manage your worry, or to manage your worry that comes up with that stress. So it may be that you plan to do more formal tolerating uncertainty experiments during that time. It may be that you're more hyper aware and hyper tuned to those problems that tend to come up for you over and over again. And so you can identify those problems earlier on during the holiday season and then be able to kick into your reframing and problem solving. So you want to plan ahead. And if you can plan ahead for foreseeable futures and to develop a plan for what you're going to be doing to manage your worry during that time, that can go a long way in preventing you from spiraling into excessive worry and high levels of anxiety during those stressful times. Second thing you can do to maintain your worry is to think about what are some early warning signs that you may want to pay attention to that would indicate to you that you're starting to slip back into old excessive worry habits. Now, the thing is, people don't just tend to start worrying excessively one day. It's, for a lot of people, it's something that they've done their whole life. So you may have gone through these worry management videos, you've learned a lot of skills, and you're using them, and you're able to really manage your worry quite well. But it's important to remember that you've only been managing your worry quite well for a few weeks now, compared to maybe a lifetime of excessive worry. So that lifetime of excessive worry is kind of like an old habit. And so it's really easy to fall back and slip back into those old worry, excessive worry habits. So the idea is to think about what are some clear signs for me that are going to be like early warning signs that tell me that I'm starting to slide down an old familiar path of excessive worry. And you want to try to make these as specific as possible so that they can be your early alarm or your early warning sign that something bad or something wrong is going on in terms of worrying excessively. So things like noticing that you've been having trouble sleeping for the last 4 nights in a row. Things like noticing that you haven't been doing any tolerating uncertainty experiments for a couple of weeks. Noticing that maybe you've been avoiding some social interactions because you've been a little bit more uncomfortable or experiencing a bit more stress. Those behavioral indicators, those behavioral signs that maybe you're sliding back into old habits. Because once you recognize that maybe you're starting that slide back into old habits, you can then kick into using your worry management skills again and really focusing on those worry management skills to get back on track and to ensure that that little lapse doesn't lead to a full relapse in terms of high levels of worry, high levels of anxiety. Because it's a lot easier to make a course correction earlier on than it is when you find yourself worrying excessively again. And the third tip for ensuring that you're maintaining your progress is to have a plan for what you would do if you ever did find yourself worrying excessively again. Now, I know for a lot of people, they don't like to think about this. They want to be positive and optimistic about being able to manage their worry moving forward and that it's not going to be a problem for them again. But I like to think of this more like an insurance policy. So the idea is to sit down and spend some time writing out a recipe or a formula for exactly what it is that you would do. What are the various steps that you would go through if you noticed yourself worrying excessively again? So it may be bookmarking or highlighting some of these videos and going back to watching some of these videos. It may be that you've taken some notes from these videos. So it's about reviewing your notes and having a plan for what it is that I'm going to do if I catch myself worrying excessively again. And you can have this instruction manual and you can fold it up, put it in an envelope, and then right on the outside of the envelope, open in case of worry emergency. Because if you ever catch yourself worrying excessively again at some point in the future, it's really difficult in that moment to remember exactly what it is that you need to do to better manage or better control your worry. So, what you can do if you ever find yourself in that situation is you go to this envelope, you open it up, and then you just read the instructions that you have come up with for you. And so it can be a nice insurance policy, and hopefully you never need it because you've been planning for stressors, you've been catching yourself in those early warning signs that you might be falling back into old habits, and you're continuing to use the worry management skills that you've learned on an ongoing basis. Maybe you never need to open that letter, but it's there for you just in case you need it. So, those are some tips for maintaining the progress that you've made through using these worry management tools that I've been talking about. And that's the end of our 14-part series on worry management. You've learned a lot. If you've watched all of the videos, you've learned a lot about worry. You've learned a lot about the factors that maintain worry and all of the tools that you can use to manage worry. This is not 5 simple steps to overcome worry. I've never believed in that sort of approach because I think it tends to invalidate and minimize worry. If it was as easy as 5 simple steps, nobody would be worrying excessively. Worry management is a lot of work, and it's a lot of hard work. But if you understand the skills and you understand the tools and you use them, these skills and tools work, and you can better control and better manage your worry. So I would love to hear your thoughts and comments about this. So please leave me some comments down below. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, please hit the like button. And if you'd like to see more of my videos, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and you'll be alerted every Thursday when I post a new video. So thank you for making it all the way to the end of this video and all the way to the end of this 14-part series on worry management. It's been a lot, but I hope it's been helpful. So thank you, and I will see you in the next one.